Zoning Board public hearing. We'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. The first item on our agenda is to take action on all consent agenda items. So if you're here today to speak about any item on the consent agenda, if you haven't already done so, fill out a blue card like this and bring it to our planning staff. Looks like we've probably gotten them all. So just so you know, we've got 3 cards for 4F, so we've pulled that off, consent. I understand, well, we have a card for 4H, but I understand that the person doesn't wish to speak, so we won't pull that off the consent. And then the other 2 we got are for item 7A, but that is already off the consent agenda. All right, so Board Member Sarkisian will read the consent agenda items for us today.
Okay, so there's a little bit of movement on the agenda here, so you want to make sure you're listening for your case that you want to hear. So items remaining, there are a couple items actually also going on the consent agenda that were previously not. So items on the consent agenda are item 2A, minutes from the April 17th, 2018 and April 18th, 2018 study sessions and regular hearing. Item 3A, ZON 18-0096, District 1, the 1,000 through 1,100 blocks of North Mesa Drive and the 300 block of East Brown Road, located at the southwest corner of Mesa Drive and Brown Road, site plan modification. This request will allow for the development of a restaurant with a drive-through. Staff recommendation is approval with conditions. Case 3B, ZON 18-00102, District 6, located south of Southern Avenue on the east side of Crisman Road, site plan modification. This request will allow for the development of a multi-tenant commercial building with an associated drive-through. Staff recommendation is approval with conditions with added steps per the study session earlier. Item 3C, ZON 18-00137, District 3, the 1754 West Southern Avenue, located on the north side of Southern Avenue, east of Dobson Road, site plan review. This staff recommendation is continuance to the June 20th Planning and Zoning. Item 4A, ZON 17-00335, District 5, the 1,300 to 1,400 blocks of North Power Road, located on the east side of Power Road and the north side of the south side of Halifax Drive, rezoning from OC to ID1 and site plan review. This request will allow for the development of a mini storage facility. Staff recommendation is continuance to the July 18th, 2018 hearing. Item 4B, ZON 17-00461, District 1, the 100 block of West 8th Place and West 9th Street, located southeast of Brown Road and Country Club Drive, rezoned from RS6 to RS6 HD to establish the Flying Acres Historic District. Staff recommendation and Historic Preservation Board recommendation is approval. Item 4D, ZON 18-00065, District 6, the 8900 block of East Germain Road, located on the north side of Germain Road, west of Ellsworth Road. Site plan review and council use permit. This request will allow for the development of an indoor recreation facility. Staff recommendation is approval with conditions. Item 4E, ZON 18-00066, District 3, the 1,000 through 1,100 blocks of South Alma School Road and the 1,200 through 1,300 blocks of West Southern Avenue, located at the northwest corner of Alma School Road and Southern Avenue, rezoning from LC to RM5 PAD for 10.5 acres, rezoning from LC to LC PAD for 5.5 acres, and site plan review for 16 acres, plus or minus acres. This request will allow for the development of a multi-residential and commercial uses. Staff recommendation is approval with conditions. Item 4G, ZON 18-00121, District 6, the 3,600 to 5,200 blocks of South Ellsworth Road, the 9,200 to 10,800 blocks of East Elliott Road, and the 3,600 to 6,000 blocks of the South Signal Butte Road alignment, located south of Elliott Road between Ellsworth Road and Signal Butte Road. Major amendments to the East Mark Community Plan. This request will make changes that impact development units 1, 2, 3, and 4 related to land use groups and the land use budget, refinement to the DU character descriptions and correspondence, modifications to various sections of the community plan. Staff recommendation is continuance to the June 20th, 2018 hearing. Item 4H, ZON 18-00132, District 4, 324 North Country Club Drive, located south of University Drive on the west side of Country Club Drive, rezoning from DB1 to DB2, site plan review and special use permit. This request will allow modifications to existing car wash. Staff recommendation is approval with conditions. Preliminary plat on 5A, Fiesta Village, District 3, the 1,000 through 1,100 blocks of South Alma School Road and the 1,200 through 1,300 blocks of West Southern Avenue, located at the northwest corner of Alma School Roads and Southern Avenue for a preliminary plat. Staff recommendation is approval with conditions. We are adding item 8A, ZON 18-00181, District 6, the 9500 to 9800 block of East Hampton Avenue, located north of the US 60 at the west side of Crisman Road. Minor general plan amendment to change the character type from employment to neighborhood. This request will allow for a small lot single residence subdivision and multi-residence development. The staff recommendation is continuance to the June 20th, 2018 hearing. Item 8B, ZON 18-00067, District 6, the 9500 to 9800 block of East Hampton Avenue, located north of the US 60 at the west side of Crisman Road, rezoning from NC Biz and PEP PAD CUP to RSL 2.5 PAD and RM 3 PAD and site plan review. This request will allow for a small lot single resident subdivision and multi-resident subdivision development. This staff recommendation is continuance to the June 20th, 2018 hearing. And last is item 9A, Bella and Canta, District 6, the 9500 to 9800 block of East Hampton Avenue, located north of the US 60 at the west side of Crisman Road. Preliminary plat. Staff recommendation is continuance to the June 20th, 2018 hearing. I think I got that.
Good job, thank you. Okay. Yes, Board Member Allen.
Do we need a recommendation for, I'd recommend that we approve the city council or the planning and zoning agenda as read in for the record for the May 16th, 2018 meeting.
Okay, do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, all in favor, please vote. Okay, passes. Thank you. Okay, so now we will move on to item 4C. This is case ZON 17-00532 in District 3, sorry. The 1600 through 2000 blocks of West Southern Avenue and the 1200 through 1500 blocks of South Dobson Road and the 1400 through 1500 blocks of South Longmore. This is approximately 145 acres. It's the Mesa Community College campus. The request is to rezone from PS, LC, and GC to GC PAD to allow for private development within Mesa Community College campus. The staff planner is Leslie Davis. Would you like to give a presentation, please?
Absolutely. Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the board. As you stated, this is the rezoning for the MCC campus at Southern and Dobson on the southeast corner. They're rezoning to GC PAD for the community college campus so that they can, and it's 145 acres. They are looking to change the way that their campus interacts with private business and allow them to enter into partnerships with private businesses on the campus based on changes in the way that education is going, where there's more need for on-site interaction and experience with actual on-the-job or training in the classroom for specific skills in the once they get out into the workforce. So they've requested to come through and rezone the entire campus to the GCPAD to accommodate that. It's currently got several zoning designations on it. They felt that the partnerships that they're forming with these private entities feel more comfortable with a commercial zoning underlying the property, makes their shareholders feel more comfortable that there's that commercial zoning underneath. They have agreed to enter into a development agreement with the city of Mesa that would restrict certain uses in the GC district, such as a car lot and some of those other things that don't really marry up with what it is that they're trying to accomplish. Staff is recommending approval with conditions, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have. And I believe the applicant is here to answer questions as well.
Does anyone have any questions for Leslie?
I have a couple of questions. I asked that this be removed from the consent agenda just because I have a few concerns. My first question is, does, whether it be the state statute or the current zoning, allow them to do everything that they want to do on this site right now? Meaning, can they sell the naming rights to their buildings as it stands now? Can they put private businesses, equipment, and partner with these private entities in their buildings as it exists now?
So, Vice Chair, Board Member Allen, as far as your first question goes with regard to naming rights, I don't know the answer to that, and I don't know if our city attorney's office has. Okay.
In regards to the naming rights, it's my understanding that under the Arizona State Statute 15-1444, one of the duties and authorities that the community college district has is the ability to name a building or a group of buildings, give someone a naming right if they make a significant contribution of money or other property to the community college. So they do have that ability.
Okay. And so do they have the ability then now to partner with private business and possibly put their equipment or their tools or whatever inside their building? It is, you know, a private, just for an example, say they partner with a robotics company, or I'm just throwing something out, or a medical supply. And are they allowed to put that medical supplies equipment in their building to train the students and teach the students and that type of thing as it stands now?
It's my understanding that if they're putting something in the building that has to do with their function as a governmental entity, so educational purposes, that they can go ahead and do that and today, yes.
And then my other question is, are they allowed to lease a building out? Say they no longer use their library. I'm just, you know, throwing something on a new building, the library. Are they allowed to lease that library out to a private business to come in there and operate? Maybe they don't have an educational purpose, or maybe they're not associated with the school itself.
So again, I'll just read from the statute, and then if MCC wants to comment as well. But according to the statute, it says that they can lease out their property for the benefit of the community college.
I guess the reason I'm asking all these questions, I have a little bit of a concern about a government entity competing with private business. And obviously MCC can possibly lower tenant rates or lease rates because they don't pay property tax on the property itself. And I'm just a little bit concerned about a government entity competing with the private businesses. Maybe you can answer that question for me.
Well, does anybody have any other questions for staff? And then we'll go ahead
Okay.
and ask Mr. Pugh to come up. No? Okay. Mr. Pugh.
Good afternoon, members of the board. Vice Chair, I was sitting in the back thinking this was on the consent agenda and just kind of daydreaming for a minute. So I must have missed that Commissioner Allen or Board Member Allen took it off. The presentation by Leslie Davis about what we're asking for here is exactly right. The answers that Mr. Wesley and that Charlotte McDermott have provided are right on also. The purpose of this whole request is to allow three things. One, to combine all the zoning districts. Let's back up. My name is Ralph Pugh, and my office is here in Mesa at 1744 Suite 217 South Val Vista Road. And I represent the Maricopa County Community College District, of which Mesa Community College is a subpart. So if you look at the college campus today, it has 3 different zoning districts. It's time to unify those and get them into one. So that's one purpose. The second purpose is, as education evolves, and as we come into where we are today, it is absolutely critical for educational opportunities to partner together with those who are in industry and business. And the really nice thing, it's not so much a competition, Board Member Allen, as it is teaching and learning, although the businesses that we partner with or enterprise with, for lack of a better word, are in the private sector. But those authorities and those abilities to do that are specifically enumerated in state statute, and it's one of the beauties of the community college district. And they can do those things, and frankly, it is a wonderful thing for the students that they have opportunities here that they do not have in other settings. And so that's the purpose for the zoning and putting it there, because our partners are not always comfortable with the fact that if they come to the campus and we say to them, well, you know, the community college district is a sovereign, separate state entity on equal footing with the city. that doesn't mean anything to people who don't live in the world that we live in planning and zoning. And so this zoning district will be helpful. And frankly, in one sense, the community college district has yielded its sovereignty to Mesa by going and asking for zoning, which they don't have to do. And in return, we've agreed to take some of the uses in GC that we don't want to see on this campus out through the PAD. That's the reason, that's the purpose, and we're excited to move full speed ahead with this new venture and get going. There's lots of opportunities out there today.
I guess I agree with the partnership. I'm a huge supporter of workforce development.
Yeah.
And that's the only way it happens, you know, if you partner with a business and their machines. I just don't want to make sure that we don't somehow end up competing with the surrounding area. I mean, this whole area is trying really hard to revitalize. It's really struggling, and I just don't want to see, by, you know, approving this zoning, which, like, you're right, they didn't have to come to us.
No.
But I just, and I know that it looks, like you said, looks better for their investors, for the developers, whoever wants to come in here. But I just don't want to see us granting something on this site that might compete with the, you know, take from the surrounding area, is what my concern is, from an economic development standpoint, right?
Yeah. That hat just doesn't leave, does it?
No, it doesn't.
That's okay,
It
Board
doesn't.
Member Allen. You come from that background, and it's understandable. And that's certainly not our intent. Could there be an entity on the campus that runs the same type of business as some in the vicinity? Certainly. And there would be some that would be in the community as a whole, for sure. But that's to be expected.
Well, how does that work, and maybe I'm getting too far in the weeds, but how does that work from a tax purpose? Because MCC does not pay any property tax, and the city benefits from that, the state benefits from that. I mean, you know, a lot of things benefit from that. How does that work if you lease, and they'll still have the ground lease and they'll have the building, so I assume that whoever goes in there still doesn't have to compensate in that area.
Madam Vice Chair, Board Member Allen, the question of taxes is truly getting into the weeds to the extent that I don't think we have all the accurate answers for that. But the overriding principle here to remember is the community college district is governed by an elected board,
Right.
unlike the university district, which is appointed Board of Regents. Further, many of us probably don't realize it, but the community college board has enabling authority to enact taxes itself. So as it relates to the balance and the proper governmental functions, if I were you, I would encourage you not to concern yourself too much about that, because this district is one of the largest in the country.
Right.
It flourishes, it's vibrant, it's run by responsible elected officials, and is a governmental entity. And so that we bring two governmental entities together today, the City of Mesa and Mesa Community College, and the district that is the umbrella of all of it.
I guess just underlying, I still have concerns about the economic development side of it, but as far as the workforce development side of it, I'm behind it 100%.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Does anybody else have any questions for the applicant?
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair.
Thank you. Any questions for staff? Are you ready to have a discussion, or is somebody ready to make a motion? Anyone?
Shelley, do you feel clear now on what your concerns were?
I'm not comfortable with it, but yeah.
What's leaving you out?
I guess, just,
The unknown?
yeah.
Not knowing who might go in there?
Well, I have a question, just to clarify. I believe John had mentioned yesterday in the study session that if a business is to come in on their own and function solely on their own and not be a work group thing, they would have to come in for their own site plan and their own items on that separately as they develop or work, or?
So, Vice Chair and board members, we learned a little bit yesterday and this morning talking with the applicant, and the fact that the community college district and the way it is set up in state statute is a little bit different than what we typically work with other colleges, particularly as we've worked with ASU over the years, and that distinction between them operating in their governmental entity or their educational role and other roles. With what we've seen in the state statute does give the community college more flexibility in terms of that entrepreneurial role they could do without having to come through the city. And so I'm getting my attorney saying I'm getting this wrong. But, so that is kind of helped us as we've worked at it and ended up with the STIP that we did on the case, as well as the fact that we are, as Mr. Pugh mentioned, with the PAD and the development agreement, limiting some of the uses that they could have otherwise potentially put on the property to keep it more consistent with the quality of the area. Again, with the STIP that's been stated, as long as they're operating consistent with state statute in terms of the uses that go on there and it's on their property, they would still be able to do those things. If they sell any of the property, those new property owners would be subject to City Mesa zoning because they're not the community college district anymore.
Let me just make sure that I understand that what you just stated was that if they lease the ground to a particular partner or entity that wants to come in on their site, whether they partner or not, they don't necessarily have to go through the same processes as far as approvals and that type of thing from us, from the city of Mesa, correct? They just, but however, if MCC sells that property, then they do have to go through it.
If they sell the property, definitely they would have to come through us. If they retain ownership, they'll have to follow whatever state statutes allow them to do.
Right. Long-term lease or whatever. Yeah.
Right.
I just want to add a little bit of, I'm not sure, clarification, but we have been talking with MCC and Mr. Pugh regarding this case. So MCC does have one of their duties and authorities. They can engage in entrepreneurial and commercial activities. The question comes in, as a political subdivision, they are exempt from our zoning regulations. The question is, if they are truly engaging in just a commercial activity and it's not connected to their educational purposes, I would think that they would have to go through our zoning processes. If it is truly just a commercial activity and not anything having to do with their educational mission, then they would go through our processes.
Chair.
But I think there's a little bit of a question about that.
We can clarify the STIP, Madam Chair.
Please, go ahead.
So, Madam Vice Chair and Board Member Allen, you've caused us to wade into deep waters here this afternoon. The comment by the City Attorney, Charlotte McDermott, is exactly right, that there is enabling authority for the district to engage in entrepreneurial and commercial enterprises. But and in our opinion, that means we can do those things. We all think of Mesa Community College as its sole mission is to teach. That's not necessarily the case. But what's absolutely true is it's not clear. There's no guidance, there's no regulations, there's no law, there's no case law about it. So we've crafted, with the help of your city attorney and staff, what we think is the appropriate condition here that says, except, let me get right to it. What did I do with it? I probably put it away. Well, you handed it out somewhere. It says, except or unless regulated, or otherwise regulated. What does it say there, Charlotte? I don't have it with me.
So the STIP says, unless exempt from local regulations under Arizona law, future development must comply with all city development codes and regulations, including but not limited to zoning, site plan review, and design review. And that's kind of what we came up with today in our discussions talking about this issue.
And that stipulation confirms the state of the law today.
But in this case, because it is on, in this case, because it is on the Mesa Community College campus, it is exempt from local regulations under Arizona law, correct?
Madam Vice Chair, Board Member Allen, yes. And as long as the district owns the land, then those provisions apply. I think what we're confusing here a little is competition with enabling authority and zoning regulatory powers. The fact that things may occur on this campus in a teaching environment and in a business environment, a partnership, where products can be produced and services can be rendered.
Right.
That's going to happen.
Right.
And the fact that those may compete with something in the area, certainly in our opinion, is not a reason to say no to this zoning case, because frankly, we're trying to compromise here with the city in this case anyway. And had we not come to you in the first place, we'd probably still go forward. It's just we'd have a hard time with our partners. Right. So that's all we're really trying to do. We're not trying to ruin the Fiesta Mall area and impede with competition. But it could occur, but not in a vigorous, it's not like, Walmart and Target next to each other or two car dealerships by each other. That's not what we're trying to do.
Well, and I understand that, and I don't have any problem with the workforce development side of it, with the education side of it, with the partnering with the business side of it. I guess what I am concerned about is the, commercial lease side of it. And we don't even know if that's going to happen, but that's my concern, is the unknown. If there's a building that's just available for lease, that definitely is in direct competition with one just down the street.
Board Member Allen, that's
that's
exactly
what my concern
right.
is.
And the statute specifically allows the district to lease property.
Right, it does.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And if it competes, what would be the difference if we zoned this property GC and a user came in and competed directly with other Fiesta Tech or area users? That happens, but that's not the intent of what we're doing today. We did not intend it to evolve into that concern.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
And I'm sure that if there's any questions that come up in the future, it's not like you will never be talking to each other again. I mean, you will have this development agreement, and you already have this relationship in place with the city.
Madam Vice Chair, the relationship between Mesa Community College as a subset of the district and the city of Mesa is longstanding, solid, stable, and very traditional. We've been together a long time and intend to stay that way. And I expect the communication to be thorough and complete as things evolve. Yeah, nothing's going to change there.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Any other questions for the applicant?
No.
Thank you.
I just wanted to make a comment that I think the workforce housing is great. That workforce housing, the work environment is great, because that is one of the things, especially depending on the type of business, we need to build that skilled labor force. And if they build that skilled labor force because they've partnered, and then they have a nearby business that they lease out on the property, they already know they have that skilled workforce in that area, so they're going to encourage to stay there and grow and flourish and things like that. So I'm not as concerned, because I think it's just going to be an extension of whatever skilled labor they've already acquired in that area and they've learned at the college. So I'm not worried about some other entity that has no association with the college at all coming in and just taking out a whole bunch of leases because it's cheaper to go there than somewhere else. I'm not really concerned about that. I think the benefit far outweighs, the possibility of that is very slim, and I think the benefit to the community for our skilled labor force is immense, and it's just going to benefit for the surrounding businesses to have that labor force available. So,
can I ask one more question? I guess then, if you're comfortable as a city attorney with these stipulations on here, that there's no reason that I shouldn't be, is what I'm, I guess, getting at.
Yeah, our office is comfortable with the conditions as well as the planning department, and we worked with MCC and Mr. Pugh to come up with these conditions, and I think we're all satisfied with those conditions.
And with the development agreement, you feel like we have control over?
Correct. The development
input,
agreement will limit the
control,
uses
but
on the
input.
property.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
All right, any other discussion before we go into the motion-making? No? Okay. Would anybody like to make a motion on this case?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. I motion that we approve zoning case ZON 17-00532 in District 3 as presented, as well as the conditions that go along with it.
Okay. We have a second?
I'll do a second.
Okay. Please vote. Okay. The motion passes with Mr. Clement absent. Thank you very much. Okay. We'll go ahead and move on to the next item, item 4F. That is case ZON 18-00118 in District 5. This is the 7500 block of East Billings Street and the 100 to 200 block of North Sossaman Road, approximately 3.4 acres. This is a request to rezone from RM2 PAD to RM2 PAD in a site plan review to allow for the development of a townhome subdivision. Wahid Alam is our planner, but he's not here today, so Wesley or Mr. Wesley?
Vice Chair, I will be his substitute for the day, so you can struggle through with me as I provide the background on this. So as stated, this is property southwest corner of Billings and in East Mesa. It is currently zoned RM2 PAD. It was zoned back in 1988 for a 55-unit development. That has sat for many years without development. We have a new development proposed with different plan area development, different standard point with, so they're back rezoned from RM2 PAD to RM2 PAD because the PAD is changing slightly from what was previously approved. The site is a little over 3.5 acres in size. You've seen their site plan. They're proposing a 49-lot townhome subdivision, so these are attached single-family units. They provided internal community space with the top lot and dog park and some other open areas for the residents. The analysis of this by staff with their various requests for modification to the development standards of certain setback deviations and so forth. Staff is in agreement with all of those modifications. We feel like they are offset by the open space provided and the quality of the development. One of the issues that we have discussed at the study sessions with regard particularly to the units facing onto Billings, you know, that proximity to the street and the doors opening to the street and providing for that type of streetscape that we're after. We also usually look for some type of appropriate separation between the public realm and the private realm. The applicant has responded to those concerns over the last few days, and at the study session this afternoon, we provided you with a new illustration that demonstrates compliance with those. And so staff is satisfied with those. The conditions of approval included a condition 5F that address that. Staff has proposed that we remove that stip with the latest change to the site plan. So with that, I will conclude my remarks and let the applicant give you further details as you might desire. Any questions that you have?
Any questions for Mr. Wesley? Okay.
Madam Vice Chair, just a minute while I load this presentation here. Very good. Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the board. My name is Reese Anderson. I'm with the law firm of Pugh and Lake, and our address is 1744 South Val Vista here in Mesa. Always a pleasure to be in front of you. We don't want to belabor this topic. You heard a very good staff report from Mr. Wesley, who we appreciate filling in for Mr. Alam. There are issues, I think, that Board Member Duff had, and I think there's some neighbors here who also have some concerns over this fissure issue. I can talk about architecture, I can talk about design, but I'd rather, in the respect of your time, focus on some of those main issues. And I guess I would just say this is background and history. And in your packet and in the materials we provided, you can see a copy of a 1984 plat for Sun Valley Ranch. And that shows on it a fissure that transverses from Sossaman all the way west across this entire area. And so you have to ask yourself, why would it have been zoned RM2? What happened? And then you say, what did the other projects do in the area? Well, they mitigated around it. They dealt with it appropriately. Here with us today is Mr. Ken Yuji, our geologist, who's able to answer any of the technical questions. But frankly, what we did is we went out to the site with backhoes. We dug down and specifically identified where that fissure is. Took photos of it, documented it. It's there in your report that you have. And then we deliberately planned that road to go right over the top of it. And so you might ask yourself, why does this have this unique design road angling through the project? And that is because what better way to seal up the fissure than to put a waterproof road right over the top of it? As we would say, right, the enemy of fissures is water. And so as water enters those things, that's what causes them to move. So you can see here, we've painstakingly brought landscaping back, we've brought the underground water retention away. All those things are the appropriate distance away that have looked at by our geologists, as well as City of Mesa staff. And so that's what we've done, and we think we've addressed it appropriately. No one has questioned any of our methods, our design, et cetera. And so I would offer that up just as a little bit of background here that might answer a few of your questions. But if there's something specific you'd like me to address, I don't want to delay the evening more than necessary.
Does anybody have
Madam Vice Chair, anything?
I'm sorry.
Please let me know if there's anything.
Did you want to ask a question before? Okay.
Yes, Mr. Anderson. Yeah. I was trying to align the fissure on the narrative or the report to the site plan, and it didn't seem to line. I'm trying to understand how that, on the site plan, I can see the angling of the drive, but when I look at the other information, it doesn't seem like it aligns, and then I had a concern about sewer lines, things like that, that run adjacent to roads, causing any disruption to the land.
So, Madam Vice Chair and Board Member Duff, I'm not sure exactly what you're looking at, and if we had them side by side, I'd be glad to. What I would tell you is this, is that our geologist marks those points specifically and then provided those to our architect and engineers, and then they're plotted, and you can see that right on the site plan where it is plotted. I will tell you, and one of the perplexing questions I had was, why is this fissure in a different location than actually appears on that 1984 Sun Valley plat? And maybe that's the document you're looking at.
It's in your narrative. Yes.
Sure, and we threw it in there to show you that historical flow of just how information came to us. And that 1984 plat, in my best judgment, in my best experience, is that it was placed there as a notice, as a marker, but did not, that scale just does not give us the precise to-the-inch location. And that's why we went back out. And you can see it's actually shifted some south. Based on, my best judgment looking at that, it's shifted south. But the key, right, southwest, exactly. So the key for us, right, was sending out those backhoes and digging and scraping. And again, you can, if you look in the geologist report, you can see the actual photos. Once they mark that, again, with the survey crews, then that translates right into the site plan. And maybe that's what you're looking at. That would be my best guess of where those things came from. I had the same question.
Then how do the utility lines?
Oh, thank you for reminding me. I forgot. So the utility lines, I would say, transverse or cut across that area. And the issue is really not one of saying, hey, we're going to, you can't take an approach where you say, we cannot have any water at all, right? You mitigate the issue by saying, we're running these things instead of parallel, they're running across it. And so by sealing it up and not letting rainwater, storm water get in there, you're stopping that from having any movement at all.
The fissure, it extends, I assume, beyond this property that we're considering to
Yes, it does.
Today.
Yeah. If you look at that plat, and I mean, I've got a couple exhibits I could show you that, let me see if I can just quickly go forward here. I mean, as you can see, we're prepared to talk about every aspect, but. So this here, Board Member Duff, might be what you're looking at. This is that fissure plat from 1984, the Sun Valley plat. And then I just tried to highlight in red what that looks like. But this is the actual line, is when people went out there and found it on site.
Okay.
And then you can see here, we've tried to just kind of plot it across best we can, I mean, the whole area. But you can see here, if you go back to this original plat, and here's a big picture of what it looks like. It's close, right? But it's shifted on us.
If I may interrupt very quickly, Vice Chair, Board Member Duff, I'm wondering if you're looking at the project narrative, page 6, with where it shows the fissure on that page.
Yeah.
And then, yes, as you would look at that and look at their site plan, they do look to me like they're in totally different locations.
Right. So, anyway, we'll go from this as far as the actual location versus the narrative.
right?
And what was that taken from on the narrative, or it just?
Could I see it, if I could ask staff to show me real
It's
quick?
on
I
page
could probably-
6 of the narrative.
So let's zoom in right here. So this is the 1984 Sun Valley plat, and you can see here where, let me just advance forward, there's the plat line. And as we zoom in on it, see if we can get a little closer, we can't. But that right there, the picture that's there is Tract L from the 1984 plat.
Okay.
That's all it is. It's a zoom in, a much more clear photo depiction of what Tract L from that 1984 Sun Valley Ranch plat. That's all that was.
Did you have anything else on that, on the Fisher location?
I don't know a lot about fishers, that's why I have so many questions. But is there any way of knowing if that has deepened or widened over time since 1984? Was there any analysis done at that time in comparison to now?
Sure, there may be. Let me, if it's okay with you, Madam Vice, why don't we have Ken Yuji, our geologist, come and speak to those issues? That'd be all right?
Yes.
Good afternoon. I'd be happy to entertain that question again with, if you could repeat it, regarding whether they've enlarged or deepened.
Since 1984, was there any analysis done
We're
at the
gonna
time
need
in
to name
comparison? Oh,
name it.
I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. If you could just read your name, address,
Oh, I'm
and
sorry.
direct-
My name is Ken Yuji, last name spelled E-U-G-E. I'm principal geologist with Geological Consultants at 2333 West Northern Avenue, Phoenix 85023.
Thank you.
21, excuse me.
Okay.
And that fissure was first identified in aerial photos in the early 1970s. And over that time, prior to that study that was done by Mr. Lou Scott, who constructed that drawing, was in 1984, it had grown quite substantially. But also during that period, it was frequently covered up and buried as it developed and obscured from the public eye. But over time, with the runoff through that area, before it was fully developed, it kept opening up and enlarging. The fissure gully would get deeper and wider. And when I first looked at it back in the early 1990s on another parcel that's on the northwest end of the earth fissure, we were seeing fissure gullies that were over 20 feet deep and 15 feet wide, commonly filled with detritus, soil, asphalt, concrete, refrigerators, washing machines, things like that. And when we went and investigated it last year, when we trenched across the fissure trace again, it still exhibited a similar width that hadn't significantly changed since the last time I looked at it almost over 20 years ago. So it did have a peak of growth and development, but then over time, the conditions causing it to enlarge were diminished partly by the overfilling, but also partly by the reduction in the subsidence in the area over time.
Well, just in layman's terms, I kind of know a high level, but can you explain the mitigation that would take place and like how you dig, if you dig down, or like the covering, like how it works?
Yeah, the basic mitigation plan involving the earth fissure first would consist of excavating a very large trench along the entire length of the earth fissure, approximately 10 feet deep, and extending at least 10 to 15 feet either side of the earth fissure trace. And it would be, of course, the excavation would have to be sloped for safety. So at the top, it would be probably 30 to 40 feet wide with the fill. And then it would be some filter fabric, a permeable membrane would be laid across the bottom of the excavation, the entire excavation. And on top of that would be a reinforcing geogrid, basically to resist movement in the subsurface. And then it would be backfilled with engineered soil, engineered backfill material compacted to densities that are specified by the geotechnical engineer. So basically, we're putting a large buffer or plate barrier between the fissure and the ground surface. And then we're grading it, and with the addition of the roadway, which also has in its design a reinforcing membrane at the on top of the subgrade before the pavement is placed, whatever it's decided to be, and that provides additional reinforcement. If it's asphaltic concrete, the reinforcing membrane will minimize and reduce the potential for cracking of the concrete, which would then, during a storm, get into that subgrade and possibly over time get down into it. But with that reinforcing membrane, we're mitigating that quite substantially. And of course, then we've got the 10 feet of fill on top of the existing earth fissure crack. We didn't have the geogrid underneath that with other filter fabric. So if by some chance of fate, surface water would percolate down and get to it, even if it got into the mitigation zone itself, the water would go through it, but it wouldn't remove the material because we have the membrane there to keep it there. It's built it's consistent or analogous with the same thing they do in constructing an earth-fill dam. It's a cutoff wall. If we had something come in from off-site, underground flow, the presence of that barrier would force that water to flow beneath it and not breach the surface through the property. That's its intent. Water is the biggest culprit in the enlargement of these things. When they initially start, in response to tensions caused by groundwater withdrawal, the fissure cracks only, at most, the largest I've seen clean is maybe 2 inches. Of course, that extends from the surface down to the water table, which can be anywhere from 150 to 500 feet below ground surface. And when surface runoff gets into that little crack 2 inches wide, they can open up overnight, as one did out in the Harquahala Valley, to about a 30-foot width and 30-foot depth in response to a major thunderstorm that happened in that area. So we're keeping the water out. We've got a buffer over the existing one. I'm quite confident that it acts as the same technique that we used on that parcel to the northwest on this fissure. And it's been there, you know, I did that project back in, what, 1992, 93. I haven't gotten any phone calls from anybody about any problems. So I feel very, very confident and comfortable in doing this, and it's been done in other areas as well.
And you supply your study to our civil engineers, I would think, or is that, who in planning and development or transportation or civil looks at that and decides, okay, this meets the requirements, we're satisfied and sign off?
Yeah. Vice Chair Dalkey, yes, they did submit it, but we don't have the engineers, geologists on staff to review that. We rely on his professional stamp and seal on the documents that it does meet all the requirements.
Okay.
And you know, that goes with most of what we approve on a daily basis. Engineers, if we can't trust them, they're going through a similar process. They need their professionals for that reason, and it doesn't concern me so much the fissure at all, truly, because I understand, as an architect, I see, you know, geotechnical engineers get involved and civil engineers, and I see how often we have to rely on their experience and their skills to correct these issues. I actually am impressed how far you have gone as a group to mitigate the crack, because you could hypothetically build on it if you were to mitigate it and do it.
No, that's not our recommendation.
Agreed.
With the mitigation.
Just saying, you know, there's a lot of time and effort put in to try and correct this issue, and I'd be very comfortable considering the recommendation and understanding how much work there is to get that repaired.
If I may add one thing, there are also in the plans that we provided the mitigation for public utilities, water, sewer, gas, to cross these fissure zones and the extra measures that are needed to allow that to happen and not have an impact on the fissure.
I have a quick question for Reese. Is there going to be notice, I would think, to people who purchase a disclosure statement of some? I would think that there's a mitigated fissure.
Madam Vice Chair, the question is, will there be a disclosure that, and the answer is absolutely yes.
Yeah, we think so, yeah. Okay, thank you.
I do have one more question. So on the developed property from the northwest, you said that the same procedure was done across that property and to stabilize the earth, as well as continued all the way to the property that we're approving today, across all those lines and through the roadways and everything. So it's a continuous.
It was, the parcel we worked
Support.
on was the one that's adjacent to the trailer park. There, shoot, we had a different aerial.
I'm looking at the site plan. I mean, excuse me, the vicinity map.
Just use this mouse right here. See if that'll let you do that.
So all the way from University to, say, the northwest corner of
The
University and.
property we looked at would be that office complex, the OC development in the
Okay.
northwest corner, south
Oh,
of
I see.
University
Uh-huh.
and west of Sunshine Boulevard. The other portion of the parcel included the RM2 to the south, that little box there in the brown color.
Right.
And then also from Sun Valley Boulevard to the, can't make that out, the street to the, that curving street to the east.
75th
Street.
75th Street, included that whole section there south of University. That was the investigation that we had at that time. When we did our investigation, that parcel RM1, or 3, that's to the south there, was already had been built when we were there. So unfortunately, they missed it.
So we don't know if there's continuous support across from the northwest to the.
Oh, it does. I've got some aerial photos. I'd be happy to leave them with you, with the staff, that shows a plot of the earth fissure on the 1993 aerial that extends to north of University in the northwesterly direction, and also to the southeast that extends into that development to the at the southeast corner of the Aspire parcel, where they actually did some mitigation of the development that was under construction at the time of the earth fissure was extending itself, and they had to repave the road and everything else there right at Sossaman and that, I believe it was Adams Street or Fairbanks, I guess it was. No, it's one north of that. But it does go beyond this parcel on both ends.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for your expertise on this topic. We appreciate that.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Anderson, did you want to speak to us about anything before we open up to the public? We do have some blue comment cards.
No, Madam Vice Chair, why don't we let the public speak with your permission, then let me come back up and share some thoughts if necessary.
Okay, that sounds good. All right. So we have a first card from Karen DeGray. You wish to speak? If you could please just state your name and address for the record.
Yes,
We'd
Karen
appreciate that.
DeGray. I'm at 205 North 74th Street, and I live in Unit 220, but I also have a rental unit in 114, which is in the building adjacent to the property that we're discussing. The rental unit has a wall behind it, so it's not that this is visible from my rental unit or from where I live or anything like that. I'm very concerned about the fissure. I'm concerned about what could happen under the best of circumstances. These townhomes, these heavy townhomes get built. And there they are, and people get money from the bank. They get advanced money from the bank. The bank says, that's okay. We don't mind that there's a fissure on the land. We don't mind that there's a crack in the earth there. Okay, we're going to advance the money, okay? The people who buy these townhomes have to get insurance. So the insurance companies all have to say, that's okay, we'll give you insurance, even though there's a fissure on the property. I think that that's the best case scenario. I think that the worst case scenario is that the Fisher moves again more, and some of the buildings and some of the property in that area, since the Fisher is really at a very bad point there with very large gullies and holes and unstable earth. And I think that worst case scenario could be very bad. Could be very bad for all the adjoining property, and could be bad for homeowners who go in there and are just basically stuck with something that they can't do anything with. There's going to be an HOA. There's townhomes, there'll be an HOA, okay? The HOA at the beginning isn't going to have any money to pay for anything that could happen. Where is that money going to come from to fix the problem if one develops with the Fisher? And also, what I'd really like to know is, this property has had different realtor signs on it for, 15 years. Every 6 months, there's a different realtor. There's a different developer looking at it. There's a different person involved. There's a different company. And they're trying to say, what can we do to use this property to make some money? I'm a business person, I understand that. They're trying to make some money. Well, the developers look at it, all of these developers that you've probably dealt with many, many times, they've looked at this piece of property, and they've all looked at the geologist reports that they've gotten through the years, and there have been many. And they've all said, we have ties to Arizona. We don't want our business reputation to be involved in this project. We don't want to be involved in putting townhomes on that property. We don't want to do that because we value our reputation. We have other projects going on in Arizona, and this piece of property we should walk away from. This is what all of these other experienced developers have said. This is what all of their geologist reports have told them, that this is not a good place to build. I don't understand what has changed here, except for the fact that there's a very new developer with very little experience who doesn't seem to have any ties to Arizona or Mesa. And what is going to happen if something happens with that Fisher? He's built these, he's sold them, and he leaves town. Where does the money come from to fix anything? Will there be news cameras at the next lot over from me in 5 years saying the townhomes are falling into the ground, the earth's unstable, this whole property is no good? What's going to happen? Is there going to be a news crew standing there saying, well, the homeowners will have to do something, they can't find the builder? We had a building boom a dozen years ago. And we had a lot of builders who built things partially, who built things completely, and who left town after that. And people were chasing the money after that. Where does the money come from? Who's going to fix that? Who's responsible? The insurance? Does the bank pay because they want to try to save what's left of a piece of property? There's the homeowner involved. What happens? What I really want to know is the financial part of this, of who is responsible if the worst happens and the Fisher moves or gets bigger. And Fishers do. They're cracks in the earth. They get bigger, So that's what I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll try to answer your questions after we get through with the other public comments, so thank you. Okay. Mr. Wesley, I noticed that we don't have our 3-minute timer popping up. Oh, did it? You monitor it for me if you could, because I can't see a number over there. Okay. The next card we have here is from Brenda. Is it Cagney, I hope? Okay. You've indicated you are opposed to the item and you wish to speak. If you'd like to come up, please, and state your name and address for the record. And I should have said before, we'd like to limit your comments to about 3 minutes, if
Bright lights bother my
possible.
eyes. Yes, my name is Brenda Gagney. I live at 205 North 74th Street, and I abut the same property where the building is going to be. And I have the same issues. My biggest issue is why I'm gravely concerned about is the proposal of the construction on the site, because it has been consistently determined that there was a fissure on this tract of land, as documented. So therefore I wonder why all of a sudden that they're saying that is be able to build on it. You know, why is Cornerstone Property Services suddenly able to and willing to develop this tract of land? And I'm a taxpayer, I'm a voter of Mesa, and I would expect that Mesa should be more mindful of the geographical, evidence rather than succumb to the pressures of economics. And I'm concerned of the risk for the future homeowners who will be liable for the outcome of these recommendations if they're not followed by the developer, or is the city of Mesa going to be responsible? And will the buyers be granted full disclosure of the geological, financial, and even personal risks they are taking before deciding to purchase on this tract of land? And as a new developer, will there be a standing pool of money in the homeowners association if damages were to happen? How will the HOA absorb the expenses while maintaining the value and the image of Mesa? And towards the end of it, and in all, I hope that Mesa will make a careful, informed decision that uses scientific information, common sense, and forward thinking while looking to act in the best interest of the current and potential future residents. And also, too, so if the city of Mesa is going to be responsible if there's a problem, or is the builder going to be responsible? And for another development in terms, it will increase traffic, noise, increase demands on school, and we already having a problem with the teachers striking, and increase the demand of the sewer and the water, loss of our wildlife, increase pollution, and more. So I am very concerned, mostly for the fissure and the problems it can cause. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, we also have a card here from Nancy, who's opposed to this item. You don't have the last name, but Nancy, please come up and state your name, please.
Hi, I'm Nancy Casenas, and I'm in one of the N units that, according to the map, the fissure goes under 2 units at Sun Valley Villas. And my concern is a few years back, we had a mini earthquake, and there were tremors. And I noticed that part of my wall had cracked as a result of it, and my door started sticking. So I'm wondering what this would entail with the fissures, if they would increase, and if there has been any material, like the geologist had stated, if we're covered or not underneath, because when we had those tremors a few years ago, it did do some damage to my walls. And also, I guess our main concern too is who's going to be responsible if us as homeowners and the future residents of Aspire, who's going to be responsible to help them when they have damage too. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we have one more card, and it is Ed. And I'm sorry, I can't read your last name, sir. If maybe you could clarify for us when you state your name for the record.
My name's Ed Piotrowski, and I'm at 205 North 74th, Unit 116. Again, my back wall abuts the property. My neighbors pretty much said what, I'm not going to beat a dead horse at this point. But I do have a question. Originally, there was a retention pond on the end of the building. Is there going to be another retention pond? And the other thing is, in the geological report, they said the pool should be at least 50 feet from the fissure. I'm not sure if it is or not. And also, if there is a retention pond, would it be 100 feet from that fissure?
Okay. We'll ask.
Those are, the questions that I have.
Okay. We'll ask the
I
applicant.
mean,
those
I have
specific
the other
ones.
concerns the same as those people, but I guess we shouldn't repeat it.
Okay. Well, thank you.
Sure.
All right. So that is it for the public comments. Oh, I'm sorry. Did you submit? Oh, could you come up to the podium and just state your name and address, please?
Colleen Melton, 7613 East Akron Street, Mesa.
Okay.
My concern over the fissure, if they stop water from getting into it, is that going to cause it to travel further east than what it is now?
We will
The
ask-
water's got to go somewhere. And I already have one section of my yard that has a sinkhole constantly.
Probably defer to our acting guest geologist for some of these answers to the
Okay.
fissure questions.
That's it.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other comments? Okay. I'd like to give Mr. Anderson a chance to come up and respond. I was taking some notes, and I know you were too, but it seems like responsibility is the big word of the day. Who's responsible in the event, of a disaster, damage?
Madam Vice Chair, let's just start back at the beginning. This is RM2 zone property. The use is an RM2 use. We're consistent with that use. We fall within the density allowed in the zoning district. When initially we approached staff about some other non-residential uses on this property, we were told, no, you need to stick with the residential use. Here we are today, proposing a residential use consistent with the approved zoning on there. In fact, it's less units than what was approved in 1988 when the existence of the fissure was known. So while we greatly appreciate the concern of our neighbors over the future residents that may be here, I would simply suggest to all of us that we need to rely upon the experts. And Mr. Ken Yuji has shown his well-known knowledge of the area. He has personal experience with mitigation of other projects of similar size and scope and with this same fissure. And by his own testimony here today, he has shown that he has not had any problems with those through their appropriate mitigation efforts. So I would simply suggest to all of us to let these experts and construction experts do their job. We will absolutely disclose that there's a fissure there. There's no way to hide it. There are recorded plats, drainage reports, I should say drainage, fissure reports in the public record. And for those of you who have dealt with public reports, you know that those things will be there. You can't just wipe them out because you don't want them or you're trying to hide from them. The Department of Real Estate requires you to put those there. So these will be absolutely there. Will there be an HOA? Yes, of course there will be. Will it be appropriately funded by the developer when he turns the HOA over to the homeowners? The answer is absolutely yes. And so here, I mean, I can go on and on. Let me answer just questions about, I can't speak to anyone else's property. What I can tell you, though, is this. As water is appropriately dealt with on our site and put into underground storage tanks and then bled out into the sewer system, the storm sewer system, that helps everyone else in the area. It absolutely does. Our underground storage tanks are 100 feet away. There is a stormwater retention pond in the southwest corner. It's 100 feet away. And those are the distances that the geologist has recommended. Same with the pool. It is recommended that it be 50 feet away, and it is 50 feet away. So every one of those distances that our geologist has recommended, we have followed to the letter, or we've exceeded those criteria. Again, I think that this concern over the fissure, frankly, board members, a little bit of, we just don't want anything built there. And that's just my opinion. I'd be happy to answer any other questions. I know that some of you may have questions, and please, I'd be glad to answer them.
Board Member Allen.
And my question, Mr. Anderson, is seemed to be, and I didn't hear you touch on it, was liability. I mean, that seems to be a huge issue that everybody's brought up. So that was my question to you.
Well, Board Member Allen, the question of liability is, will the builder and developer be responsible if there's a problem? And the answer is absolutely yes, right? There are construction defect laws in this state, and if these mitigation efforts are not followed, right? The homeowners and the association have a right of claim against that developer. It's a little unfair to say that Mr. Bryson Bennett doesn't have ties to this community. His office is at Green and Brownfield. He lives in Gilbert. His family's here. He's worked here in Mesa for many years. And so, yeah, look at him. He's young. But that doesn't mean that he's a bad person, right? Or that he's an inexperienced developer. So it's a little unfair of some people to levy those type of complaints against him. The developer will have insurance. Same with the HOA. It'll absolutely have appropriate insurance. But I think we're looking at this a little wrong, which is that this is, a sky is falling. It's going to fall. It's going to be the world ending. But what Mr. Yuji has shown, right, is done appropriately. I mean, the projects he's worked on were in the 90s, right? And so that work done the right way, which we have absolutely been on candid and forthcoming from the very beginning on this, we don't anticipate a problem here. I mean, we're going to improve the situation by removing water away from the issue.
Okay. Any other questions for Mr. Anderson?
Can I ask, and I don't know if you know the answer to this, does the standard homeowners insurance, does that cover fissures? I only know because with this volcano in Hawaii right now, everyone's like, oh, what does my insurance cover? What does it not? Do you know, does it typically cover this sort of thing, or is that kind of an act of God thing?
I don't know. My guess is this. This is a well-known documented issue, and this HOA would absolutely have and should have a rider for these type of specific issues. And I can't see it being any other way.
Yeah, okay.
Any other questions? All right, thank you.
Thank you. I hope I answered questions, and I apologize if I was a little too firm.
That's fine. Okay, we'll go ahead and deliberate.
I just wanted to comment that I've done a lot of work in Pinal County. And if anybody knows about Pinal, it's full of fissures. There's lots of stuff going on there, and you're constantly mitigating fissures. But that doesn't make a project undevelopable. A lot of Arizona, just based on the water table and the way it is, it's just we have fissures and we mitigate them, we address with them. One thing, I don't know, my guess is that based on the 1984 one compared to today, my guess is that it hasn't moved. It was just not correctly surveyed or located with what we have, the technology of today. And so it didn't actually move. It just wasn't documented correctly to where it actually was. And so now it is improperly documented. And fissures, you mitigate them as best you can. The best things for them are streets and open space. And you don't put it, you don't want to put a foundation on it, but there are reasons that there are mitigation documents and engineering standards in place because it can be done, and it creates the ability for you to utilize the site. So I think based on what they've done here and the way that they did the street alignment, I just think the reason it sat that way for a while, and it's been going through, is just trying to find the right buyer, the right person that would take the effort to properly mitigate it. And it just took that long, and that's just kind of what happened. And so now that there is one, that's why you're seeing more effort. And then seeing also the surrounding area that has been there for quite some time, and it's doing very well. I have no problems with this, and I think that anybody going into this site is aware of it, and anybody that lives in Arizona, sometimes they're not even aware of how close things are. And so I'm not worried that that's gonna take out a house or it's gonna go and do something like that. I'm fine with this project, and I have no problems.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments?
I'm the same way. I rely on geologists all the time for my work too, and I think as they said, it's better for everybody to have this part of the fissure covered up. It's gonna protect it. One piece of advice I might give, if you have a moment, you homeowners that are right there, grab this geologist on the way out and ask what you can do to mitigate it where it's coming across your property. Since you have him and he knows exactly what to do. You may, for your sinkhole and some other things, he may have some ideas for how to solve that so that doesn't keep coming back.
We've already closed the public portion of the meeting. I'm sorry. Thank you. Board Member Asshole? Oh, I think that we've got some comments here or perhaps a motion.
Well, Well, definitely no negative comments. I'm actually excited about this. It's good to see something mitigated when there's risk. To mitigate something, it's a positive thing, and I think it will be to the benefit of everybody and the site. I'd love to see it developed rather than left there plain and let this grow and get deeper or whatever it may occur. This would be the right move to make. So I'm only excited and think ultimately once developed and people living there and after recognizing it hasn't moved in years and a mitigated version of it up the street hasn't moved in 20 or 30 years, it's more just a good thing to see some development, see some new people and get our economy moving. So I'm excited about the project.
Thank you. Board Member Allen?
I'm just ready to make a motion if we're ready
please.
for that.
Yep, go ahead, please.
I would make a motion that we approve case ZON 18-00118, District 5, the 7500 block of East Billings Road, Billings Street, south side, and the 100 to 200 block of North Sossaman on the west side, 3.4 acres located on the west side of Sossaman Road, north of Main Street, rezoned from RM2 PAD to RM2. What am I reading it wrong? RM2 PAD to RM2 PAD, and site plan review. Approval with conditions.
Yeah, we have the deletion of condition 5F, as discussed previously.
That one's, sorry, I'm sorry, with the addition of case,
It's a deletion of
The removal of 5F.
the removal of 5F. I thought we were talking about two different cases.
Yeah.
Removal of 5F.
Condition 5F, yes.
Okay. I don't remember what that is, but with removal
That's with regard
of,
to the 18-inch.
oh, that's right,
stoop.
okay.
And then
So approval with conditions with the removal of, what was that, 5F?
5F, correct.
Okay, do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, all in favor, please vote, or all vote, and then we'll see if you're in favor.
Huh? I don't think there was a plat. Is the plat separate?
Yeah, you could go ahead, since you've already made the motion, second, go ahead and vote on this, but then just read in the plat, would be fine.
Okay, we'll redo the plat after this, okay?
All right.
Okay, so that particular case passes. Board Member Allen, would you like to make the motion
Absolutely.
on the plat too? Okay.
So we'd also like to make a motion that we approve Aspire at Sun Valley, District 5, the 7500 block of East Billings Street, south side, and the 100 to 200 block of North Sossaman Road, west side, 3.4 acres located on the west side of Sossaman and north of Main Street. Preliminary plat. Approval with conditions. Do we have to remove anything on this one?
5F on this one.
5F, with the removal of condition 5F on this one as well.
Okay, thank you. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, everyone vote, please. Okay, this one passes as well. Thank you. All right, so I believe we should be on item 6A.
Good.
This was when you got off. 6A?
Yeah, we're going on to 6A.
That's all right.
Madam Chair, let's see here, if you're willing to go ahead and move item 7A up, take care of that one that maybe has citizens here to talk about.
We'll put 6A to the back a little bit, and we'll talk about item 7A, which is case ZON 17-00507, District 5, the 1200 block of North Ellsworth Road and the 9100 block of East Glen Cove Avenue, approximately 1.8 acres. This is a site plan modification that will allow for the development of an enclosed RV storage facility in the LC zoning district. And Cassidy Welsh is our planner on this. Go ahead, Cassidy.
Thank you, Vice Chair, members of the board. As you will recall, we discussed this case last month at the April planning and zoning hearing, and the applicant presented a site plan which showed a ingress off of Glen Cove Avenue at the center of the site, and the recommendation was to continue to today's hearing so that the applicant could continue to work with staff and see if there was any alternatives, particularly looking at access off of Ellsworth Road. So the applicant provided several alternatives that showed access off Ellsworth Road, primary ingress off Ellsworth Road, and those versions were deemed to be to have issues, particularly with in regards to transportation. When you have ingress off of Ellsworth, if for some reason this gated community had issues, for example, the RV driver forgot the code or the power was out and it was not working, they would be required to back their RV out onto Ellsworth and cause significant traffic concerns. So with that, the applicant went back to drive on Glen Cove Avenue. They did revise it so that it was as close to Ellsworth as allowed. And staff feels that this is the best possible scenario for this site. We did add a condition that the driveway access from Glen Cove is allowed to accommodate the enclosed RV storage facility. However, any site plan modification for another use would require council approval to utilize, continue to utilize that access off of Glen Cove.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions for Cassidy?
I just have one quick question for you. So you've relocated the drive closer to Ellsworth Road, and that's entrance and exit, both ingress and egress on that one. It's just entrance is all.
Entrance only.
And then the egress can be, you can have an entrance or exit on the CVS parking lot, basically that way, and then an exit onto Ellsworth, correct?
That's correct. So there is primary entrance off of Glen Cove and primary exit onto Ellsworth, which is a right turn only.
Right.
And then there's a secondary entrance and exit through the CVS site.
Thank you.
Okay. Does anyone else have any questions?
I have a question. I've heard different things now. The CVS site is an entrance and an exit?
That's what they've indicated on their site plan, yes.
Okay. Is there going to be a presentation before we?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Any other questions for staff? Okay. Would the applicant like to come up and make a presentation? That's reasonable. Okay. Mr. Anderson.
Madam Vice Chair, thank you again. Let me switch screens if I could here on the computer. Madam Vice Chair, members of the board, again, Reese Anderson with Pugh & Lake, 1744 South Val Vista, number 217 here in Mesa. As Cassidy Welch stated, last time we were here, we had the opportunity to go and try and make some other iterations and plans, and I want to just add a little bit to what Cassidy said, which was we've tried several different iterations. I can show you those if you'd like to see them, but gone through a handful of ones and where we were trying to have that primary access be on Ellsworth Road. Again, the transportation department, I understood someone was asked to be here. I heard Robert Apodaca was here, but maybe he got tired of the fissure talk and left. I'm not sure.
We do have Sabine Ellis from Transportation here.
Oh, we do?
Yes.
Wonderful. Oh, thank you. Wonderful. Both Sabina and Maricopa County the city of Mesa has looked at this. The Maricopa County Transportation have looked at this. We have slid the driveway as close as possible to Ellsworth Road. And so we've mitigated all those things. If you remember when we were here last time, we were saying, hey, this driveway is about 3 houses in. Now we're 2 houses in. And if you remember, too, the gentleman on the corner, they were supportive of this project. We remind you, too, of our traffic study, which showed that we had 1 trip per day on Glen Cove. That was what they were looking at. So remember, they used a mini storage traffic counts of the ITE manual. That's the International Traffic Engineer Manual. And then that is the closest we can get to this use. And I think it's well known and recognized that this is even a less intense use. The point being is that when we say 1 trip a day, we've rounded up to get to 1. So it's not going to, the impact on Glen Cove is very imperceptible. It's just not going to make that much of a difference at all. And I remind folks that are worried about an RV getting up too much speed, et cetera, we're traveling 100 feet. I mean, that is twice the distance of the vehicle. And the ones I've ridden in, they don't accelerate that fast. So you're gonna make that turn. It's gonna be very, very minor coming in, very slow, I should say. That's probably the better word. I'm happy to show you, again, the different iterations we went through, but a vehicle of this size backing out an arterial, again, when we learned that too from transportation, that's just against the rules. If the same thing were to happen on Glen Cove, that's a much slower, the traffic counts on Glen Cove are so small, and while that risk is there, it's an acceptable risk on a street like Glen Cove. It's not an acceptable risk on a street like Ellsworth. We've also addressed building mass, which is a design issue. We've kept the heights down. As far as comparison to our other neighbors to the west, if you remember the large assisted living facility. The other thing that we did, and again, we offered this up, which was to place a condition of approval that the driveway there is specific to this use. We do not want anyone to have an idea that this is the camel's nose under the tent. And so if the use ever changed, the council gets to look back to say, no, we are going to, we're going to reevaluate this and make sure that no one else can use it. We all would agree a fast food restaurant having a driveway there would be inappropriate. Or I would dare say, similar to the car wash you approved earlier on Country Club and 3rd, where their driveways are there, right there on those local streets, that would be inappropriate here too. But it happens, it exists. But the comparison of that car wash on Country Club and the traffic counts there, that's not even in the same ballpark. We are so much less. And so while we understand the concern of the neighbors, we just respectfully disagree with them to think and suggest to you that this is such a small issue. And it comes to you with support of your planning staff, your transportation staff, as well as the Maricopa County transportation staff, who actually have control over this street. Again, I'm happy to show you any iterations, plans, talk more details if you'd like. Again, I want to be respectful of the board's time. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
I would like it if you could just quickly go through those site plan changes and maybe just a quick bullet point of this one, McDOT said it can't work for this reason, or maybe the city transportation said a comment on a particular entrance or exit.
You bet. I'd be honored to. Let me just start with the original site plan in January 2018, just for history, and I'll try to speak quickly. If I stutter or say something wrong, please just interrupt me or throw something, just not too hard. So this was the January site plan of 2018, and you can see that there were 2 entrances on Glen Cove. And that we had one was an entrance only, the other was both ingress and egress. Here were the issues and the responses here there's too many entrances. We reduced it to 1. There was stacking or queuing on Glen Cove. Again, that's not appropriate, so we moved that on to the site. Traffic concerns, again, those have been a consistent one, but we've talked about that before and provided the traffic study. And in the building orientation allowed views into the site. On future site plans, we've mitigated that with 8 feet tall screen walls and landscaping. And also lighting was a concern. We've kept now all the lighting low so that you're not going to see that from the neighbors to the north. So this was the site plan we showed in March of 2018 in the April 12th neighborhood meeting. And you can see the driveway. The entrance was at the far west side. There, that was an entrance only. That was the queuing area was moved on site. There's the security gate. There were the exits. You can see there's how vehicles would enter the site and leave. This was the April 18th site plan. This is the one I believe we showed you when we were here last month. So again, there's the Ellsworth median break. The queuing area is on site. There's the security gate. Again, a one-way gate only. There's the exits. Again, the vehicles would enter the site and Oh, I think I went too fast, I apologize. That was what you saw last month. So April 20, this is now us working on different plans, and you can see here, we have now a two-way security gate, and the queuing area would be there off of Ellsworth Road. Again, Mesa Transportation can speak to this, but again, they told us our concern here is that if the power's out, something technical is wrong with the entrance, the only way an RV would be able to leave that would be to back out onto the site. So we thought of this plan, which now the entrance is moved to the far south side, close to the CVS Drive. And our thought here was that the driveway, vehicle here, if the entry gate did not work, you could back up a few feet, but not into Ellsworth, and then make a swinging turn to your left and come back out onto the CVS Drive. And that one here caused problems because the driveway entrance into CVS suddenly widened from a standard width driveway to a double wide driveway. So a normal resident driving south on Ellsworth Road would now be confused and would swing in and make, if someone came too fast, suddenly they're pulling into the RV storage center and not the regular CVS shopping center. Does that make sense? I don't know if I did that adequate justice. So that was, my memory's right, and I think it is, and Sabina can correct me, that was the concern with that. Again, there we had the queuing was in and out right there. So then we had a May 2nd site plan. And again, the one-way security gate there. These were the exits. You would enter. There was the queuing area. And then leave the site that way. Now this is our proposed site plan. Again, there's the Ellsworth median break. You can see up top the lot lines. They're on the north side of Glen Cove. And again, we're affecting 1.5, 2 lots. Let's just round up and call it 2. The queuing area is on site. It's a one-way security gate. And then the exit only is coming south. And I just want to clarify too, I think I had a wrong understanding too. The southwest corner where it says exit only, and this was my confusion there, that is the ability to come in, but really only smaller vehicles will be able to. The full-size RVs are not going to be able to make that turn in, especially if they're coming east to west. They just cannot make that turn. And so that's really just for some of your personal vehicles, the smaller ones, when you go to pick up your own unit, if that makes sense.
Just for clarification, so you're talking about out onto Ellsworth is only, you said to the east? I'm sorry.
Yeah, so the driveway there on Ellsworth is exit only.
For smaller
Absolutely
vehicles.
exit only. No, for any size
Okay,
vehicle.
okay.
Any size vehicle. I'm just talking about the southwest corner.
So you're talking about through the CVS
That's
parking
right.
lot. So that's not it, you said it is an entrance, but
You
only
could
for
use it.
small?
You could use it for an entrance.
personal vehicles?
For small personal vehicles. The tough part is when a large vehicle pulls up, where do I place a control pad, a punch code to get in? It can't be done when it's on someone else's property. Now, we will have the
They'd
ability
have to get out and go to the gate,
That's
go
right.
in, get
That's
back
right.
in.
And so it just doesn't work on a practical effect. So I think if I hit another button, I'll run on to the next slide. But really, does that help explain a little bit of the work we went to and tried to figure out another solution? Again, we work closely with the transportation staff, the planning staff, and you got the memo in front of you now, board members, that this really is the best solution here. For this, remember, it's LC, it's zoned for this. This is an allowed use here.
Thank you. Does anyone else have any questions for this?
I do have one more question. So directly across from that exit only on the southwest side, so it would be the northwest side, correct? Just straight through to Glen Cove? Are you with me on the site plan here?
I'm here. Let me focus on the site plan. What
Okay.
corner am I at?
So right now you're starting back here by the CVS side?
Okay.
Okay, and if you go just straight to the north, I assume that's north?
Yes.
Okay, go straight north. That is just, I assume, a security screen that's across there. Is that, does it have a gate? Is it accessible? Is there a drive approach? I just didn't know.
I understand the question. The area you're talking about, Board Member Allen, is directly left or west of the label that says queuing area. on your
Yep,
screen. Is
yep.
that true? That is an 8-foot tall, solid screen wall.
Okay,
There is
perfect.
no penetration through
Thank
there at
you.
all.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Yeah, can I get just another clarification? So you're saying for the RVs, they can't turn here. We've talked about that, right? There's no turn. But you're saying it's too difficult for an RV to come down this road and come up that way? Is that the understanding?
Yeah, yes.
It can't turn this corner right here? Is that the?
If you're,
I can't turn this corner.
yeah.
It can't make that corner right there. Okay.
I don't really have any more questions. I am impressed of I mean, this is an extensive redo over many different iterations. I personally can only agree that, I mean, this is an LC zone. I've driven a Class A 45-foot motorhome. I would be nervous. I'd want the best possible access. You know, if I were an RV owner, I can see that what the city's saying and what the owner's saying, and that they're arriving at kind of one of the last good solutions. I'd hate to see it not develop, zoned as it is, not develop in this way. I mean, it's such a low traffic count. It seems like a pretty good opportunity to clean up the site and not overburden the neighbors. Anyway, that's just my thinking.
Well, we do have a couple of neighbors who would like to speak, so we'll go ahead and give them an opportunity to do that. Okay. The first card is Rich Wimmer, opposed to this item and wishes to speak.
Let me see it.
Sorry, I was late, so I didn't get to fill out the card.
Oh, if you could just state your name and address for
My
the
name's
record.
Courtney Cassan. I'm on 9138 East Glen Cove. And I see that we're still on the street, and that's kind of our big problem. If you have two entrances, why can't we figure out how to make it one entrance and one exit? We're just trying to keep traffic off our street. We don't need more traffic coming on our road. It's already only one of two entrances into our neighborhood, so we're just trying to eliminate all traffic. And now the house that it's right in front of, there's a low-functioning autistic boy that gets picked up from school 2 or 3 times a day. So that's like, they're not here to defend themselves, but it's gonna affect a lot more than just, if it's only one vehicle affecting our neighborhood a day, why can't it just go through CVS where there's not people living? So that's it from me.
Okay, thank you.
you.
Mr. Wimmer, did you want to speak still, or? Okay. Okay. And we have one more card. Let's see, Chris, is it Konchak? Okay.
Yes, I'm Chris Konchak at 9137 East Gary Lane. I'm opposed to this. And Reese Anderson, at the last meeting and the meeting before, said that they're going to be on Glen Cove there. They're going to pull on and stage. Stages means when they stop on Glen Cove and disconnect the towing vehicle. Now, when you start disconnecting the towing vehicle, if there's 2 cars parked, there's no room for a bus to come in. No room for anybody to get out of the neighborhood. Okay, the way that road's lined up, I live on the next street over, and by the time you park 2 cars, there's only one room for a garbage truck to go down the middle. So when you have this, and it's only 2 houses in, so he'll be stopping to park. There'll be any time of the day or night, stopping, get out, and disconnect the truck or Jeep or whatever they have, you know, disconnect it, may leave trash in the street because they're industrial, consider they're in the industrial area, and then they'll back that vehicle up, pull up to the gate and go in, and then the tow vehicle will follow them in. So here you are, you're tying the street up. Now, he says only 1 a day, If you put that into a year's term, that's only 365 times a year. Okay, that doesn't count how many of these times that motor vehicle is going to break down. It's going to break down right there on the way in. And then a tow truck has to come. Now you got that tow truck coming, and it's got to go through the whole neighborhood to tow this vehicle out. Now I'm involving all the neighborhood. Now, I believe all you people would love to have this motorhome only one time a year, 365 times coming through your neighborhood. You know, just one time. Or a motorhome towing it out, or a tire truck coming in and repair the tires. They come in. This lot doesn't look big enough to accept a tire truck or a tow truck or other equipment. And then, like he said earlier, the gate's not working and they can't pull in. Now they got to back up on Glen Avenue, just like they did on Ellsworth on his statement. Now they got to go around the neighborhood to get out. Again, we got another person only once a day at 365 times a year they'll be doing this. So think about that, and I thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Anderson, did you want to have an opportunity to come up and respond?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I wasn't quite clear of Ms. Courtney's concern, and maybe if you could reiterate it, but I think we've tried to address that from the earlier site plans of having 2 entrances on Glen Cove to just 1. And even to rephrase better, originally in January, there was both an entrance and an exit on Glen Cove. If you remember in your mind's eye that early site plan, that just simply does not exist today. To Mr. Chris's comment, if I accidentally said stage, it was a complete mistake on my part. There is no staging of any vehicles on Glen Cove Road. Let me tell you real quick what the depth is from the back of curb to the security gate. It's 77 feet. That is plenty of space for a 45-foot RV in a vehicle. And if you even were towing a Suburban at 20 feet, right, you would still be way off the curb and not blocking any traffic. If we want to compare traffic counts real quick, let me just, and I'm going to accept his numbers, that we've got 365 trips a day, or a year, okay? Now, if you are familiar with the ITE manual, you will know that each residential house on average generates 10 trips a day. Well, there are approximately 100 plus homes in that neighborhood. So let's do the math, and suddenly you're at 365,000 trips for that neighborhood coming in and out all day, plus their own RVs. And we showed you a slide last time that there are many RVs and boats in this neighborhood. And there's several of them that have already given us notes that say we want to put our vehicles here. So again, when you get down to the real numbers and you want to compare apples to apples for trips, I mean, we are so imperceptible, it's unbelievable. So I hope I've answered some of those questions. But if I missed one, Madam Vice Chair, please let me know. I want to be as complete and full as I can.
Yeah, I think the one that, from what I understood, the question that was missed was directly across from this entrance is a family that has a child with a low functioning autism, and that bus comes in to pick him up and drop him off,
Yeah.
twice a day. And I think that was, if I understood correctly, that was the
Thank you.
concern.
Thank you for reminding me of that. Concern for any children is an absolute paramount on any project, absolutely. And here, I would think that it's more of a perception than a reality, because our drivers, again, are coming to the site. They're turning barely off of Ellsworth Road, seated higher in an RV. They've got a command view of the street. I doubt they're going to be going any faster than 5 to 10 miles an hour at the most before they would make a turn. I do not see any real safety concerns at all. And you could pose that question to your transportation department also if you'd like. But I think everyone's comfortable that it's an absolute valid concern. I just don't think it's a real risk, with the utmost of respect to those folks that live there.
It probably would be a good idea to hear from our transportation expert on that.
Was there one more question for me at all?
I believe
Thank
her
you.
other, one moment. I believe her other concern was asking, for entrance through CVS, which I believe we already covered that it doesn't work. So I think just restating why it doesn't work, I think would alleviate that concern.
Two things there, just to add a little bit more detail. One, we do have a cross-access easement with CVS, but the driveways are fixed there. We cannot change their location, widen them, et cetera. And if you think about inserting a keypad or some sort of other, I just don't have the legal right to build that on a CVS property. So when I talk about staging, I do mean it that way, staging on the CVS drives, and that's just not appropriate. And it wouldn't alter those issues. But here on Glen Cove, right, we can get in there. And I know that one gentleman had a concern of vehicles breaking down. I just don't see that as happening in a frequency that he does.
Thank you.
Thank you. If you could maybe shed some light on some of the neighbor concerns, that would be helpful to us, I think.
Hello, I'm Sabina Ellis, City of Mesa transportation engineer, and I am going to speak about the discussed here. I wanted to bring a little bit of different perspective to this, other than reiterating what was already said. If there was an entrance off of Ellsworth, for anybody, any RV coming from the south, they would not be able to make a U-turn at Glen Cove. So what they would most likely have to do is go north, turn left onto Princess Drive, go south on 90th Street, then turn east on Glen Cove, and then turn right onto Ellsworth and try to get into that entrance that would be there if there wasn't one off of Glen Cove. So here we are affecting 3 neighborhood streets, Princess, 90th, and Glen Cove, whereas if the entrance is off of Glen Cove as shown, we're really affecting 2 houses once, and I think that would be a better solution just if you consider, let's say, half of the vehicles would come from the south. Again, there's no other option. I don't think a 50-foot-long RV could make a U-turn physically just because of the constraints of the roadway. So I think this would be a better solution, trying to keep vehicles off the neighborhood street. Just in addition to, again, what was already said, everybody presented really well what we had worked out in the past as we were going through different iterations.
For perspective.
Board Member Boyd, do you have a question?
Yeah, can I, Sabrina, that option 2 that he showed with where the entrance was right down by the CVS entrance?
Correct.
And I think the reason why that wouldn't work was for a confusion of the driveways. Is that, do I understand that right? Is that a common problem that we see in the city, or is that something that, I mean, I know that there are several places where I turn in the wrong driveway and then I have to kind of go over, so I've seen that scenario before. Is that something that's typically a challenge to the city, or?
Not typically. If we have a shared driveway, we would have one entry lane and one exit lane. The way this would work out, because we have a gate where the RV has to go in, we have to separate the entrance and exit to the CVS from the entrance and exit to the RV park. So we basically have a really wide driveway that has an entrance, an exit, and an entrance and an exit, if that makes sense, next to each other. So that's where the confusion comes in. As you go southbound on Ellsworth, you can't quite tell that that's separate, because that's not normally how a shared driveway works, and we can't make it work any other way with the constraints here being that we have to have a gate to get onto the site. So we have to design it a little different than the standard, and that's where the confusion would come in. Okay. And that's why that wasn't supported on our end.
Would signage help at all, just to address some of the neighbor concerns about children, even if it's like children at play or just caution, just something to alert people, even though we're not assuming they're going to be driving fast to get to the entrance, but just some extra measure of caution?
We currently don't have a federally approved sign for that type of disability. Children at play signs we don't use, and it's not just Mesa, that's nationwide, because on a neighborhood street, you should expect children everywhere. So if you place it somewhere but not in another place, does it mean there's no children in the other area? And that's where that general perception is nationwide, to not use those signs specifically, at least not in our right-of-way. I know there's people that use their little men that are standing in the front yard, and they can do that at their own discretion. But again, there's no federally approved sign to advise of children, because there should be an understanding to drive. There's children everywhere. We do sign for deaf and blind children, because if a driver sees that sends a clear message that child can't see. They know how to react when they see a child that might apply to, or they can't hear. But if it's autism, a driver can't assess what does that mean, what am I supposed to do, so we don't have signing approved that includes that disability for that reason, because it's not a clear message. So in this particular situation, there's really no sign we currently have available.
Okay. Any other questions?
Just a question, and so other facilities similar to this within Mesa, have you had any issues with, I mean, not they're not all the same in terms of being on a residential area, but in terms of how stacking is or backing up, do you have heard any complaints from area? And when it comes to like RV facilities, boat facilities, things like that, have you had any responses or complaints over the years since they've been?
I'm not personally aware of that, but we do have facilities that are older that have no stacking. So in recent years, we've had paid a lot more attention to that and making sure that the stacking can be provided on site, which what Mr. Anderson mentioned, to move the gate here in this case 70 or 75 feet. So that's really a safety improvement based on earlier standards that we're trying to improve upon and keep an eye out as these developments come in. For residential, it's been a requirement for a long time. For apartment complexes and such, we do require significant stacking when it comes to storage places. It's not been, there wasn't a standard in past years.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you. We've already closed the public comment portion. I don't think we can typically open it back up, or can we, Mr. Wesley?
It's up to the discretion of the chair.
Yeah, gosh, well, go ahead, come on up if you'd like to. Just state your name and address for the record, please.
My name is Hope Marsh, and I'm at 9030 East Glen Cove Avenue. And I keep hearing about one vehicle, and I really want you to think about this when you make the decision. It only takes one vehicle to hit a child. It doesn't take 10 during the day. It just takes the one in particular. And the main concern, again, is just that one entrance. That entire street is a dead end. There's 3/4 of it pretty much already that has a solid wall all the way across. And when you talk about vehicles, you know, yes, I have trailers, and yes, other neighbors do, but they know the neighborhood. They know who's there. Do you understand? I mean, they know that they're going to be conscientious. These other people are not. And guaranteed, they're going to be coming from a trip. I don't know. I'm just going to make an assumption. They've had a drink or two. I'm not, you know, like I said, I'm not saying the house is falling apart. I'm not saying anything bad other than the fact there is a realistic picture in the whole thing. You have to consider it's a residential area. Keep that in mind. Like I said, I know you wouldn't want it in your street. You wouldn't want your kids out there. They're riding bikes. They're walking around. It's the one opening. How badly do they need to have that place there in front of these homes on that street? And again, these people are going to come in through the north side. They're going to come into the north side because you know what they're going to do on Princess? They're going to come around and they're going to stop and they're going to clean up and straighten up, get stuff in before they go into stage. Guaranteed. I have no doubt in my mind. We have a camper. We do that. But we do that in front of our home. That's not their home. That's our home. That's our street. So please think about it. Consider it. Seriously. This is, I just can't believe that there's even this much discussion regarding. It only takes one vehicle. There's kids on that neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you.
I have if I can ask a question for transportation. We keep hearing about they're worried, or I don't even know if we can do this. I know certain traffic counts are required for it, but I'm pretty sure RVs and large structures don't like speed humps. I was wondering if that's something that could be put in places to prevent, like they mentioned, like cutting through the larger part of the neighborhood or something to keep them from, you know, just coming in on Glen Cove and not going any further down or anything like that, just to, you know, make kind of like an obstacle for larger vehicles to go through there if there's any options.
Yeah, we do have a speed hump policy. There are certain requirements associated with it. We don't just put that in, and it's up to the neighborhood to approach us on that, and they have to meet certain speed and volume requirements. Once that's met, there has to be a neighborhood survey, has to be done, and has to go to a transportation advisory board and ultimately to council. So there's a process in place.
Is that something the applicant could put in?
I'll remind you that those streets are in the county, not the city.
Oh, the
so it'd be
that's
through the
true.
county, not the city, to do
Okay.
that.
That's true. Thank you.
Never
That would
mind.
be, yeah, never mind. I knew that too. But there's a process for sure behind that.
Do you know, or does anybody know, does the county have some type of a special needs or a handicap sign that they put in neighborhoods? Is anybody aware of that on the streets? No?
I mean, I think that if that's something that's possible, maybe it's something that we can add as a stipulation to it. I don't know how we would do it, but, and I'm just saying, come on up here, just before I lose track of what I'm saying, maybe if you can agree, if there is signage that is available that McDOT, or I'll just.
Let me address two questions I think are pending, and then if you want me to address Ms. Marsh's comments, I can too. But first, let's talk about signage, which is, we are absolutely not opposed and would support any signage. And so we're happy to commit to you on the record to reach out tomorrow to Michelle Kogel at Maricopa County Transportation and ask them that question and provide that answer right back to your planning director. And if there is a way to put signage, we'll pay for it. Let me tell you about, I don't know what the county's policy is on speed humps, but we are willing to, again, contact Michelle Kogel, provide an answer to John Wesley, and if they do, I would suggest we locate one, again with the neighborhood's permission, immediately west of the entrance of our facility. I think that's an appropriate place to put it, which would discourage any vehicles from wanting to go any further west. Now, if it's possible, again, we will do it, and we'll do it at our expense. And I think that would be a very appropriate thing to do. Again, we're happy to do those things. Whatever we can think of, but we're happy to do it. I just one comment about Ms. Marsh, though. I really have a hard time saying it's a valid concern that someone will stop and clean out their RV, but not on Glen Cove. Why would you do that ever if you've got a indoor facility with trash and the sewage dump, cleaning? You're going to go right to your unit, right where you can take all those bags and put them right into the dumpster. You're never going to stop on Glen Cove. It doesn't quite compute with me that someone would want to do that. I think they'd be motivated to do it on site.
You could probably have some sort of, something in a contract with someone who has a unit that says you can't do that.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And it's a great idea. We're thinking about some of those things as we listen here, but we don't want anyone staging on Glen Cove. They should come on site, queue, go through the gate, do all their cleanup preparation right there. That's where I would do it. You've got access to everything. Why would you want to stop there and then walk 100 feet to the garbage can? Other questions?
I don't think for you. I might have a question for staff. So Eva, Mr. Anderson stated that he's willing to contact the county to find out if they can put signs or at speed, speed hump or some kind of a speed reducer in there. Is that appropriate for us to add that as a stipulation that he at least reach out or try?
Vice Chair and Board Member Allen, we are quickly scrambling on that question because we knew it was coming. So I think there are a couple of choices, three that I can think of. One is he's said on record that they're ready to do that. That would be in the minutes, and you could rely on that. I think you could, as somebody makes a motion, refer to his statement and expectations to that. If you actually want to get to the point of a stip, I think it would have to be something along the lines of a stipulation that requires Mr. Anderson or the applicant to document that they have contacted the county and provide us with their response. And if the county does allow them to install speed humps and or signs, that they are willing to do those in accordance with the county's requirements. But if the county does not allow that, then we've got that documentation from the county that they did ask. That's the best we could do. I don't think we actually require it to be done. We were also, I think some mention was made of some kind of notice to the people who lease these spaces about in their lease agreements, again, something there about their they've got to come into the facility and not stop on the street. There could be maybe some notice in there too about their children in the neighborhood, that type of thing. But again, what value those really are long-term, those are also possibilities.
Okay, thank you.
Those seems like some good ideas, I think. And it seems like Mr. Anderson is, well, he suggested it, that he'd be willing to reach out. And I don't think he'd have a problem with providing the documentation, an email from Michelle or something that says, hey, we talked to her, we can do this or we can't do that. I think that's a good idea. Does anyone have any other thoughts or anyone ready to make a motion? Did you want to say something?
Yeah, go back and forth on this one a lot, but when it comes down to it, I would much rather RV owners be confused about coming in at a double driveway than these large vehicles going down a street. My street is just down the street from the high school, junior high, and an elementary school, so we get, the beginning of every year, we get the bus drivers that don't know what they're doing coming down our streets, and it's, I don't know, maybe the worst thing a city planning board can do is say, hey, here's this nice street, these are luxury goods, we're gonna kind of mess up your street a little bit because we don't want people to be confused a little bit further down. So I don't like any of the solutions, even all these mitigation things, I don't like any of them. I think there should be a better solution found.
Okay, Board Member Allen, were you here ready to say something?
I'll give this a shot. I think I'll give this a shot. I would recommend that.
Vice Chair and Board Member Allen, just to anticipate maybe where you're going, I assume that you're going to be making a recommendation for approval. If you could reference which site plan, and again, I'm assuming it's probably the May 7th site plan.
Okay.
But whichever one it is, that if you could reference that.
And the STIP mod?
Get to adding a STIP. Again, there should probably reference to the memo dated, the STIPs in the May 7th memo, plus any others would be added if you do those.
All right, let me give this a shot. I would like to recommend that we approve ZON 17-00507, District 5, the 1200 block of North Ellsworth Road, west side, and the 9100 block of East Glen Cove Avenue on the south side, located north of Brown Road and the west side of Ellsworth Road, 1.8 acres, site plan modification. And with that, approve the site plan dated May 7th and include the May 7th memo with the stipulations. And along with that, that we include Mr. Anderson's commitment to reach out to the county to find out what traffic mitigations or handicap signs that can be placed in the area, and possibly reach out to the homeowner that has that's directly across, that has the child with autism, that we try to figure out what would be the best, safest solution in that area. Did I cover it?
We'll have to probably work to figure the best way to really write that STIP, but I think we understand what you're after.
I need to re-say it, or?
That he's going to reach out to the county.
Right.
About the signage.
Right.
And provide us with a response, and is willing to implement anything that the county would approve.
Right.
To help provide signage
and the speed
drivers.
humps.
And the speed hump, whether it be
both of those
this,
are
or
part of
both.
that.
If it's the sign and the speed hump, that he's willing to do both. But I also, and maybe this doesn't need to be a stipulation, but I think it's that he reach out to the homeowner that lives, that this is directly going to affect the most.
That one gets a little harder, I think, to put
Exactly.
into
Right.
the STIP.
So maybe that's not part of my motion. Maybe I'll just ask Reese, that you ask that you'll reach out to the property owner that's directly to the north of that entrance, and not, this isn't part of my stipulation, I'm just asking you personally if you would reach out to that property owner to see.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I do have, if you would like, I have suggested wording for both conditions that may satisfy staff. if you'd like me to read those.
Before, are you going to also incorporate, and did you mean to incorporate notifying any future tenants that they can't? Okay, you're going to do that.
Okay, Madam Chair, let me take that one first, which is I would suggest this language here. The applicant shall ensure that all leases for the RV storage facility contain the requirement that there shall be no parking or staging on Glen Cove.
Okay.
I think that covers exactly everything there. The second one regarding traffic mitigation says applicants shall contact Maricopa County Transportation Department and inquire as to the installation of signage and speed humps on Glen Cove and other traffic mitigation abilities, and report back to the planning director. If allowed, applicants shall install such at applicant's expense.
Okay. That's good. That's perfect.
If allowed by the county, I just insert.
If allowed by the county.
If allowed by the county, thank you.
Make sure that's clear.
So I guess let me revise my motion. If that's all right, I'll revise it, right? Do I need to start over so we don't get confused? Okay, so I'm going to start over. I would recommend that we approve ZON 17-00507, District 5, the 1200 block of North Ellsworth Road, west side, and the 9100 block of East Glen Cove Avenue on the south side, located north of Brown Road on the west side of Ellsworth, 1.8 acres in site, the site plan modification. And I would recommend that we approve this, this case with the May 7th site plan and with the May 7th memo with the stipulations listed. And the two added stipulations that were read in for the record by Reese Anderson. And there was a third one, right?
No, he actually covered it.
So we're good, right? Okay.
Yeah. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. Everyone please vote. Okay. All in favor with Board Member Boyle voting no.
And Madam Vice Chair, if I may, for the benefit of the citizens who are here, again, this is a recommendation to City Council.
Right.
Right? So, no. Okay, never mind. This one.
Oh, this isn't.
It's going to council. It's going, okay.
This is the rezone to
Oh, that's
site
right,
plan
that's right.
modification.
That's right. So this one is going to council. I couldn't remember that. Remember, we have so many of these cases. So this one is going on to City Council. And so the anticipation at this point is that this will be introduced at council on June 18th for hearing on July 2nd.
It's a site plan approval, right?
Yeah, I thought it's a site plan. What makes it go to council?
We're not rezoning.
Yeah.
Oh, the stipulation.
Oh.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Got it. Okay.
Is it clear?
Could you just say it one more time in case the neighbors didn't hear when the council?
So the key date really is July 2nd, is when the City
July
Council will be
2nd,
given
City Council
consideration to
meeting.
the site plan. So that's another opportunity to come and speak.
Okay. All right. Excellent. Thank you. Okay, we've got another item on our agenda here, don't we? Yes. Item 6A. This is amending chapters 66, 67, 69, 71, 74, and 77 of the Mesa Zoning Ordinance, Title 11 of the Mesa City Code. And Lisa Davis is the planner on this one.
Thank you, Chair, members of the board. This is another set of text amendments. As you stated, that would be focusing on chapter 66, 67, 69, 71, 74, and 77. The impetus for looking at these text amendments was really looking at the expiration and extensions and appeals were actually kind of sprinkled throughout these different chapters of the ordinance. And really what we want to do is make it so that it's consistent. We have consistent language. Everything points back to those sections of the ordinance. We have
an entire chapter that's dedicated only to appeals, and that's chapter 77, and that's only an example of some of the changes that we're looking at. So in chapter 66, which is dealing with the planning agency and looking at the boards, we just wanted to clarify what those boards are making motions on and some of the applications, removing that appeals language and putting that only in chapter 77. Again, in this chapter, looking at the zoning administrator, clarifying what their duties are, since they have a role of an administrative role and a hearing officer role. So just clarifying the role when they're administrative and when they are in that public hearing officer role. And in chapter 67, looking at, the digital form that we have now for the application, making changes there in the ordinance, modifying public notice requirements, again, just making sure that all the requirements for the boards are in one section of the ordinance. Going to site plan review and design review, the changes made in those chapters have to do with, again, just clarifying extensions and expirations and appeals. And we did add a expiration date for approval of design review to 2 years. Previously, we did not have, or currently we have no expiration on design review. In chapter 74, we made some changes in the appeals, and that's item number 14 in the appendix on on page 17 in the appendix. We made some changes there, again, just being consistent with those appeals. And in chapter 77, clarified the process and what the notification requirements are for any appeal request, and also taking out any reference to fees that need to be paid for the appeal process. During the study session today, there was a question on page 18 in regard to Historic Preservation Committee in chapter 77. So that would be section 1177.4 C. We had struck Historic Preservation Committee from this section of the ordinance. And really the reason that it was struck here is that currently there isn't a requirement for public notice, and if I'm speaking incorrectly, John or Charlotte, if you want to jump in at any point. And so all it's doing is actually clarifying that, that point. For an appeal of a decision of the Historic Preservation Officer, it does go to the Historic Preservation Board, and it would be placed on that agenda, but there isn't a requirement of posting the site or sending letters or anything like that. And that's the way it is currently in the ordinance. So we're not changing anything as far as requirements for that public notice. Hopefully that clarifies that question. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
Thank you for explaining once again. So I'm trying to make heads or tails of this, and knowing what's on the future of the Historic Preservation Board. If an applicant appeals, there is no public, what is the process if an applicant appeals a decision, let's say for demolition or any decision? Is that, there's no public notice on that, and then what is their process from there?
So if there's let's say an appeal of the certificate of appropriateness or the demolition, that's the decision of the Historic Preservation Officer. That would be appealed to the Historic Preservation Board, and the public notice that would be required would just be the placement of the item on the agenda. Is that correct?
Correct. Currently, the ordinance in chapter 74, which is the Historic Preservation Ordinance and lays out those procedures, under appeals says that the appeal shall be forwarded to the board with notice of hearing as required in chapter 67. So you go to chapter 67, and for the Historic Preservation Board, there are no actual notice requirements in that chapter. So, that's confusing, and so we're trying to clear up that confusion. Again, compared to other items that we often have that do go to a board, the nature typically of the historic preservation items is really between the applicant and the staff. There's really not much of a neighborhood impact, so we've never felt there's been a need to notify of the initial action. And if you haven't notified of the initial action, notifying of the appeal doesn't make much sense either, because it's really fairly technical type issues that we're dealing with on those types of cases. So that's the way it's been historically. If this board thinks that it should be done a different way, we can sure go back and look at that and look at the need to add in notice provisions for those items, and we're certainly glad to do that.
Okay. It was, I think I'm getting the gist of how it's flowing. It is a little confusing because it bounces around and then you end up at a dead end and you're like, oh, I don't know. or you know, the process is. So I guess the way to address that is if there's any public concern on anything that is in specifically the Historic Preservation Board as far as appealing, whether from the board or from the applicant, I would say just watch the agenda and minutes as public record of, you know, the next steps and, you know, where they can continue to be part of the process.
Yes, and I think Vice Chair, Board Member Duff, we've certainly seen of late that even though there are no notice requirements, everybody seems to know about what's going on because...
the beauty of the internet.
That's right. It's all out there. It's all public records. People find out about it. And so those who are interested certainly do get involved.
And one question which might be off, or I don't know if I should ask it outside, is there any look at the process of, because notices are public record before they process, I mean, is there any look at how that can be mitigated so that we don't see public outreach and then the process is yet to, you know, maybe 30 or 60 days away? I think it would, something in there could shed better light on, you know, on handling any, you know, concerns, opinions about things that could occur in the city as far as historic preservation. The long delay, I think, is becoming an issue. And because everything's public record and we have people watching public, you know, postings before it's processed, I don't know if there's any way to update maybe the boards quicker or I don't know. There's just a little bit of upset and I hate to see it in newspaper articles rather than within the city. Okay, all right, I'll be quiet. I'll take this up after our board meeting.
Okay, that's
okay.
Good. All right.
Can I, you guys ready for a motion?
Sure, go ahead.
Okay. Can I make a motion that we approve the amending chapters 66, 67, 69, 71, 74, and 77 of the Mesa zoning ordinance, Title 11 of the Mesa City Code, citywide, ZON 17-00603. The amendments include clarification of the authority and duties of the zoning administrator, planning hearing officer, design review board, and Board of Adjustments, modifications and clarifications to application requirements, public notice, expirations, and extensions of approved requests, and the appeals process.
Okay, thank you, Shelley. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay. All in favor or not, please vote. Okay. Then the motion passes. The amendments are approved. All right. All right. Mr. Weston, do you have anything else that you'd like to talk about? Any other business? Okay. So do we have a motion to adjourn?
We do.
And a second?
I'll second that.
Okay. All vote, please. Okay. The meeting is adjourned.